Colin, thank you very much. I must say I love hearing Julian speak because you have the very essential part of what Colin was talking about earlier with regard to climate change, the impact, and all about lives and how it affects people beyond our boundaries. And then you have a very practical approach to it, make it interesting, make it light. And it's a challenge. Yes, it's a challenge, but it's a positive challenge, not a negative challenge. So I love speaking at events like this. You know, one can be nervous about speaking, but I love speaking at them because at the end of the day, everybody in this room has got a positive opportunity to make change happen. And to be in a job that you can do that and not do all the other things where you just simply have a job is an enormous lift to me when I get up in the morning to turn around and say, hey, I can make a change. So from your point of view, as far as I see it, you have a huge opportunity to make all this change happen and to be able to move us into the area that we need to safeguard all the future that we need for the children, etc., of this country, and the rest of the world for that matter. Now, with knowledge comes power to perform and start delivering on targets. And it is about knowledge. We have the knowledge of what the damage is being done to the environment. We have the knowledge with regard to the peak oil situation, which may be in 2 years, 4 years' time. And we're going to see oil prices and energy prices going up. But it's all about knowledge. And if you have that knowledge, then you are empowered to be able to make change happen. And so I'm referencing knowledge, really, the way to go forward. Now, interestingly enough, I came across some old posters that were pre-war and during the war. And this is quite an interesting one. Knowledge is important, it saves lives. And we've already heard about the impact on immigration and migration that's going to take place over the next 2 or 3 decades as a result of climate change. But it does save lives if you do the right thing. And this is simply true today as it was in those days during the war. And if you look at this excellent picture, you'll see there's a little chap on the left pulling a face. I think that looks like Wayne Rooney, or possibly his great-grandfather. I haven't looked into the records. But this is a picture of schools that obviously moved out of London. And there on the right-hand side, you have knowledge of what you were spending because you had meters and you put in your sixpence or your threepence in those days, and you know exactly how much power you were using. Nowadays, you don't have that. It's all automatic, so you have no knowledge of what's happening. These are some other things that you may not have seen, which I found absolutely fascinating because it's almost déjà vu. Fuel Watcher is now Energy Manager, perhaps. These were produced during the war in order that people turn things off. People were aware of the energy they were spending so that we could make change happen during those very, very difficult years. And it's about having that knowledge then. And there was a war then. And we have different wars, but now we have a war in real terms with regard to climate change. And we have to fight it. And we have to use everything in our power to fight it, whether it's cultural change or technologies. So energy efficiency is what really I'm about. Obviously, I'm about sustainability because I believe in being very green. But the important thing about sustainability, if we want to go to carbon neutrality, it's mathematical that if you can reduce your use of power by 50%, you bring your sustainability or carbon neutrality within half of the time frame to achieve it. So the concentration should have to be on energy efficiency. Sustainability is going to be cheaper if you become more energy efficient. So that's the focus that we all have. And it was referenced with regard to the built environment. 80% of buildings that exist today will be occupationally in use in 2050, 80%. So the retrofit market is huge. The new build market is obviously large, but the need to be able to make change to reduce carbon comes from the retrofit much more than it does come from the new build. But obviously over a longer period of time, new build is the criticality. So nowadays you have meters. Nowadays you know exactly what is happening, in which case there is an opportunity to measure, as was also referenced, measure what is happening and be able to make change happen. And here you have a simple measurement device. It's today's world, and then you have that comic cartoon, which is Frankenstein, and the meter having to be read in order that you understand the use of power and the amount of power that was used in the past. So wider knowledge allows you to understand what is happening and what is the impact if we don't do things. We've heard about volatility of energy prices. they are going to go up. There is no argument about that. The effect of the recession has been damning in terms of the private sector, particularly because they don't have the money that they might otherwise have to invest in things. In the public sector, there's been a huge investment. And in fact, what's interesting about the public sector is the public sector, in terms of its greening programme, is ahead of the private sector in terms of the levels of interest, the levels of commitment compared to the private sector, because it's being governmentally driven, and there's a lot of champions out there realising their need to make change happen. Legislatively, we're being driven there. The CRC energy efficient scheme, that is a driver. It's a driver in both private and public sectors. But it's a very, very important driver to get us to think about it. We've seen the failures of Copenhagen. We have to do it ourselves. It's not about what other people are doing. We are responsible. Each one of us are responsible. Corporate responsibility, community responsibility to reduce waste. And the reference to the deniability of some people that actually climate change isn't happening is no excuse. My attitude towards those people is not that, okay, you know, I'm not going to argue with them, but it is about waste. It's about the selfishness that this generation has with regard to the generations in the future. We have to look after and safeguard the future of this planet for the generations in the future. And so we've got to do it. Regardless of whether or not you believe in climate change, which I'm a complete believer, it's about actually thinking before you actually waste things. Now, technically, I don't know how many of you are aware of the energy gap, but the energy gap is where supply and demand is coming much closer together and is expected to happen around about 2014. As it comes closer together, then you're going to get more switching on the networks. You're going to get potentially blackouts, because they say there could be as much as a 20% over demand compared to supply at some times on the network, on the grid. That means the lights may go out in some areas, but I'm sure they'll be able to find a way of managing that. But the point is, what happens with that switching that's going on between the HV ring mains around the UK is that you're going to set up more transients, which I'll come to, more switching, more spikes, which I'll come to in a little while. So power quality is going to diminish. There's nothing we can do about it. It's a physical fact. Power quality will diminish because of the need to be able to balance the grid more often as a result of not having enough power for the demand in this country. So we talked earlier about energy prices, what they were going to do. Now, you'll see a yellow line there, which is Power Perfector's prediction of what the cost of energy will be in the future. We are very pessimistic. And we're pessimistic not just because we want you to think about it in terms of what you'll save in the future, but we actually believe the one acceptable tax that the UK residents will accept would be a carbon tax per kilowatt hour, which then could be recycled given all of the other cutbacks that are bound to happen. People are talking about this 20% cutback in the public sector, for example. Well, one way perhaps of being able to get money back into the public sector with a Salix refinancing, when they're not doing it at this moment in time, but we can expect, I hope, that more money will come in to be able to help you with the challenge, is be able to recoup that money from a nationwide tax on kilowatt-hour consumption. Other people have lower estimates. You're talking 60% as far as Ofgem is concerned. Knowledge of what others have done. That's the Japanese flag. Well, the Japanese had energy prices that were 4 times what ours were in 1993. And the reason for that, they had their energy squeeze. They don't have anything to burn. They don't have any natural resources. What they needed and what they had to have was nuclear. And nuclear is very expensive. So their energy prices were much higher than ours were. As a result of that, a technology was born by need in order to be able to make them more efficient. Now, we know about the Kyoto Protocol. It came from Japan. The Japanese have won more international awards for efficiency, energy efficiency, than any other country in the world. And with the stress they had of energy prices, a technology which is now called Power Perfector was born and installed in something over 300,000 sites throughout Japan with the support of the government, grants from the government. And this technology was entirely fundamental. It came between the supply from the grid and every single building before the switch room. That allowed the power quality to be changed as it went into the building and produced savings from that. So it was very widely endorsed and rolled out. Now, what was it? Supply optimization, which is something nobody has done before this technology was brought to this country in 2001.